The Lone Star drama isn't over yet, the DGPT drops the 2025 schedule, and did you know the World's Field events just happened? Don't worry, we got the coverage you want. What's up, degenerates? It's the Disc Golf World. I'm Jefferson, and alongside me as always, the one with all the holes in his game, Swiss Cheese. Recapping everything you need to know before the World Championships. Well, that video technically comes out Wednesday, so make sure to subscribe to not miss out on that, just like our daily round recaps that you won't want to miss. And big thanks to those that go above and beyond by supporting on the Patreon or becoming a member. Without you guys, there's no way we'd be sleeping at a Cracker Barrel waiting to attend the World Championships as we speak. If you happen to see us at the event, please come say what's up. I promise we're less dicks in person. Before we can go into what pros have been saying about the courses, let's check out that Lone Star damage control. More like burning the house down, but makes sense when the face of your brand is out showing why other companies' discs are better. Seems weird when the reason for cutting sponsorships with Leah Sinagini and Chandler Kramer were for not posting your discs on social media. Also, I'm taking this as a moment to address the stupidity of Lone Star's social media marketing through their players. Forcing your sponsored player to talk about a disc they might not even bag, but worse, actually might think is a bad disc, yet still have them pushed to their fans. And if you don't, apparently that gets you cut from a contract. Please tell me how having your players lie about your product is a smart decision. I'm not saying to not have them make posts, but when we hear players talking about how they don't even bag the disc, feels weird and non-genuine, which basically can sum up the leaked post from the Lone Star team page. When the dude starts it off with please don't share this information and that the drama is dying down, seems more like you're trying to ignore the problems you caused rather than taking any sort of responsibility. Oilfield millionaires, am I right? Keep being petty about players not coming to say hi when they're in town. Let's not forget those small details of lowering someone's salary and causing massive headaches for the other during their season. Because if you think the problem started once they were officially kicked off, you would be mistaken. If you've been confused what I'm talking about, make sure to watch Friday's video for more details. The World Championship starts this Wednesday, and the boys have been soaking in Lynchburg. And don't worry, Swiss is the one kicking the bed. Here are a few things we've heard while scoping out Ivy Hill, the ball golf course of the two. Essentially, everyone thinks hole 5 is impossible to birdie, and that would not be the only one described that way. Not sure if the greens on the slopes are a factor in that thinking, or if it's the massive elevation changes throughout the course with tons of artificial OB. Pros are calling for caddies, so if you're in the area and weren't going to pay the VIP prices, here's your chance to have the best view. Because frankly, these courses might be tough to spectate. Hole 6 was changed just a few days ago after some complaints from pros about the OB being too tight. Feels strange when a hole results in the same score for someone who throws it 25 feet to the right or left as someone who throws it 300 feet deep. Although, we heard the most negative comments surrounding what Swiss and I have decided will be the fan favorite. That being, hole 17. It's been described as a tweener distance, but the shape is the tricky part. The green is extremely tight with OB on all sides, and of course, the huge-ass pond you gotta make it over. And hey, if you're listening, Mr. Jake Mon, you went 0 for 3 on the water skip at practice. If you try that shit again, I'm calling that sandbagging brother Ryan to come sub you out. Other comments made were, this is the second to last hole of the World Championships? But pretend I said that in the Joel Freeman missed putt tone. Ezra even said this in his practice round video.
We have a safe area short or the basket, which is also short. Small green, water carry, tons of OB, really small area to even get to the basket. It's like, the gap looks to be tiny, lots of overhanging branches.
Not much room behind.
And if you go OB anywhere, you go to the drop zone, which is just short of the pond.
I'll throw out there, drop zone is the best possible place you could land a layup.
Right.
Don't love that. This is an absolutely beautiful green.
It really is, man.
Majestic. I wish there was more room.
Too bad for him, the FPO and MPO tees are the same. At least our boy Tomas likes the hole.
We love this type of holes made for me.
Who cares if he was talking about how lucky you have to be? Finally, for my favorite quote I heard while we sat watching pros practice. This is the worst f***ing hole at this place. Followed by, and bitching about it ain't gonna do anything. Before we recap the World's Field events, I'll let Swiss discuss his thoughts on the 2025 DGPT schedule, since I can see him getting antsier than Nicholas Antela in line at Chipotle.
Beth at 69.
I just told myself, you just got to will this one in there. Whatever you have, just will it in there.
This man is unbelievable. This is what athletes live for. This is the moment.
The 2025 DGPT schedule has released, and with it, everyone's opinion on what exactly they got wrong. One of the biggest things most have noticed is the drop in tour stops in the U.S. from prior years. Many would like to point out that this is the tour listening to pros' concerns and allowing more time for health and travel. Convenient talking points instead of being honest with this year's attendance numbers and overall profitability of the Disc Golf Pro Tour. Unless you really want to believe they are listening to the pros on the tour stop numbers and completely ignoring players' issues with course length, use of ball golf courses, and the maintenance and lack of changes to courses still on next year's tour. So if you are speaking this narrative, at least acknowledge this is the tour simply throwing a bone to players with a long list of issues. Instead, most of these changes made were done with the obvious intention of profitability, with the addition of new locations over stale stops on this year's schedule. If I had a nickel for every fan who gave me an excuse for this year's attendance being light, I wouldn't be staying in a Cracker Barrel parking lot. We've heard weather, location, population, even the Plus event being 4 days and fans were tired. All those factors make it even more important for the DGPT's further expansion into the European market, with them giving that section of the tour an entire month of coverage not split with US stops. Makes sense with the revenue and support that these stops are getting. Add that the European Swing that year not only has the World Championship, but another major in the European Disc Golf Festival on this year's tour, greatly shaping the schedule also, which seems to be everyone's largest gripe of having back-to-back majors on the schedule. I understand the optics. However, a very necessary evil if you are hoping for the best talent pool at these events. This travel is paid for by the pros, with very few exceptions, something lost on most fans consuming this sport. Splitting the majors would more than likely split the player field also, which ultimately will still happen with them back-to-back, but still significantly less. Funny, we as fans have already forgotten some of the biggest names who've skipped just this year's European Open in Owen Scoggins, Holland Hanley, Andrew Marweed, and Cole Redolin. Add all those first-timers or those who returned after a period away who went this year just for the prep of next year's World Championship run. Those being Gannon Burr, Chris Dickerson, and Matty O, just to name a few. And that's not even getting into how it also makes sense geographically. The return of Konopiste with its history and the PCS Open are also huge for the expansion across all of Europe, which if Europe continues to find the success it already has, could become even more of a feature in the future. Returning to the US portion of the tour, the Texas Swing got a much needed shakeup. First by shortening the number of stops with the elimination of the Texas States, but also shifting the Elite Plus over to the Open at Austin instead of Waco. The fact that no one is up in arms about the loss of Texas States should be proof enough for reason behind the decision. And with the formation of not only Sprinkle Valley, but the entire venue of Austin Beer Works makes sense with their addition to the Harvey Panic course for a split 4-day Elite Plus event, which to be honest has been the narrative around the tour since this year's USWDGC, where everyone was talking about this unkept secret. Don't believe the notes of the course not being ready, because even if it isn't, this venue will be showcased. As for Waco, at the very least, they can go back to what everybody wants to see, which is 3 days over at the Beast. Now for the other big news with this schedule announcement with the removal of the Dynamic Disc Open and Jonesboro Open. The two stops with some of the longest history of being on the tour now gone. Though everyone loves to highlight DGPT's notes that they are already on 2026 tentative schedule, which for me is not as set in stone as many would like to believe. Both of these courses are currently being worked on. Champions Landing is going through some large renovations, while Jonesboro is adding another course to the property to possibly showcase. Fans can't ignore these stops have been marred with poor attendance issues and a lack of change to the courses, having them become stale. In fact, both of these stops have benefited with their regional proximity in scheduling events for every continental tour. Doesn't matter how close the tournament action is on coverage for you on the couch. When a venue is not pulling in enough people to fill the property and buy merchandise, their place on a tour that is struggling financially will always come into question. Which even with the changes being made to each of these properties, if stops in their place next year can deliver, I for one would not trust that DGBT press note. I'm looking at you, Jonesboro, which might be the only stop that I've personally made on my tour, which I can honestly say I have no desire to return as a spectator. Kansas City Wide Open being the kickoff to the West Coast Swing is much deserved, a tournament with history and a course that has become more difficult over the years in a metro area is a dream for the tour scheduler. This stop finally being able to showcase a full pro roster should help even further in attendance. I love this move for the short term and it being an absolute slam dunk, and possibly long term also if fans and the action can deliver. Let's not touch Champions Cup not being in the woods despite being news for months now. And the addition of Cascade, though a positive, was in large part due to the true story of the West Coast swing from this year's schedule. That being the Northwestern Disc Golf Championship and the unification of Milo McIver and Glendoveer. I like the idea of the West Coast getting a World Championship event, even if it's that early in the season. Glendoveer is one of the premier stops on tour, and Milo has the past for it to be considered, but does need to put in the work from what the pros have spoken out on. Besides that, this stop is easily the early favorite to win the world's bid. The last major talking point is the removal of the dgpt championship from the disc golf mecca, better known as the Charlotte area. Again, a stop that just hasn't gotten much traction from their earlier years on tour. Many love to point to the close proximity that USDGC pulls from the fans just the week prior, instead of realizing for most, the end of the season is the United States Disc Golf Championship, and has been for years. The stop that continues to attract some of the largest crowds year in and year out, whose rival is only Worlds, which still in most years, still doesn't. The tour has tried to restructure the DGPT Championship and also has seen course changes to try to garner attention, all of which have failed miserably. Again, we as a sport want to make excuses, so instead, in 2025, pros and tour will make the 5-hour trek to Lynchburg, Virginia, which is the very last thing any of them will want to make. I hope I'm wrong here, but I certainly don't believe this move will impact attendance or excitement for this event that many will try to hype up. Sure, the Liberty squad will show up with their 60-deep roster, but I don't see the impact being great enough for pros who already are looking to return home and a fan base who has already moved on.
Not gonna lie, after the debacle last year with the PDGA and Brody Smith, I'm not sure if these field events signify anything, but I'm pretending they do since your boys were there to take some vids. Wait, does this mean we're post coverage now? Let's go, we made it. Starting with the worst, we gotta address the so-called skill shot competition. Because what the hell was that? Why are we having players throw discs upside down? Not sure what skill that is, and personally, don't like an event someone can win by laying up every shot. That's allegedly what some players did, but I have faith in Dylan Horst taking it down the right way. Can't believe I'm saying this, but the All-Stars was better than this. I mean, how can you have players putting when there's a whole competition just dedicated to that? Missed opportunity to test skills like turbos, straddles, or scoobers. I also wouldn't mind adding those in the putting portion, although I think those are definitely more skills than traditional putting. Not the straddles though. That was one of my critiques because you can tell they designed stations for people to straddle and some just didn't. Not their fault either, but would be cool to have certain spots needing specific stances. Probably better than making people stand on a stump, as if that's making a 15-foot putt more difficult. I will say I'm glad there was some sort of creativity in the designs, from elevation, trees, and I guess those damn stumps. Way better than the playground they used last year. But I will say, optics still look weird when you have people walking through the event, cars driving by in the line of sight, or some of the course still being built in front of the players putting. Just ask Andrew Marweed about the dude pounding stakes harder than Gannon Burr, and I saw him send one back. Don't mess with that dude's meat.
If I steal your content.
Probably wouldn't actually make a difference, but I also would like to see not every station gradually get further back. Instead, switch it up. Start one hole with a C2 putt and end with a short one, and reverse it the next. Anything to throw off a quote-unquote rhythm. Ezra Robinson would take down the putting world championship by 1 point over none other than future movie star Scott Stokely. I don't even think I need to say it. Anthony Burrell smashed a drive nearly 700 feet to claim back-to-back world distance championships. At least he's probably the first to do it in Lululemon shorts. That's kinda cool. Ezra Aderhold, on the other hand, is looking harder for that extra 7 feet than the clit. That's for sure. And of course, you had the mixed double world championship, and since we met the gatekeeper guys editing that video in the Panera we were working at, wouldn't want to spoil that. So make sure to go comment the Disc Golf World sent ya when that comes down over on their channel. But that's not everything you need to know before the World Championship starts this Wednesday. Don't worry though, we got you covered as we recap every single thing you need to know from the disc golf season so far. And that video comes out Wednesday, so subscribe to not miss out on that and all the other Worlds coverage you want this week only on the Disc Golf World.